Hello, I am David Azael, and with my partner Lyson Salgado Cesar Alberto, we will present about the morphology of industrial robots. With the introduction, the morphology of the robots works with different purposes depending on the degrees of freedom of the robot. These degrees of freedom define what tasks a robot can and cannot do. Of course, there are other points that makes a robot able to do multiple tasks, as example, the use of different tools. To know what a robot can do, we need to know about morphology of the robots, how are they used, advantage, disadvantage, and usual application of these industrial robots and their morphology. Before start, we need to explain firstly what is an industrial robot to make a context about the topic that we are presenting. An industrial robot is an automatic programmable machine that can do multiple tasks assigned by human and it has as little as three axes. Mm, in the before presentation, we have an example about the articulation of the industrial robot and how they represent an arm of the human body. And then we start with the morphologies.
Okay, so the first morphology that we're going to present is the Cartesian robots. These are also known as linear robots or gantry robots. These are usually used in the industrial space working on three linear axes using X, Y, and Z, meaning that they move basically in a straight lines on three axes, up and down, in and out, and side to side. Well, these are highly customizable and customers can choose the stroke, length, speed, and precision of the robots of most of parts of the robot arrive separately and need to be assembled by machine workers. Also, the advantages and disadvantages that these robots have. First, the advantages is that these robots are simple to operate and program. That's why these are the most commonly used. They need a minimal assembly. They have a 360 degrees of rotation, handles heavy loads. These have high accuracy. And well, now the disadvantages is that it's a complex assembly, limited movement to one direction at a time. That means that they can only move to one direction, and they have a large operation and installation area. So well, now some of the applications that these robots have is that they are used for loading and unloading, for material handling, assembly of products, handling nuclear material, and lastly for adhesive application. Also, well, other applications are for plastic molding, assembly, and machine tending. They also have some application for processes such as welding and gluing and well, particularly on large parts. And well, as a curious fact, these machines are the second most popular configuration, taking about 22% of global robot sales in well 2013. So, well, secondly, we're going to talk about the articulated robots. Well, the movement and configuration of this robot matches the configuration of a human arm. The arm of the robot works like a twisting joint and make up to 2 to 10 rotary joints acting like axes, allowing greater degree of motion. The joints in this robot are parallel and orthogonal to each other, allowing freedom of movement, offering maximum flexibility in the industrial space. So, well, next for the advantages that these robots have is that they are of fast speed. They require minimal floor space. That means that they don't need a very large space to operate. These are easy to align to multiple planes And the disadvantages is that while the robot controller, well, they need a robot controller to operate. They have a complex programming and complex kinematics. So, well, now for the applications. These robots are used for packaging of food, handling material and machinery, welding of arc and spots, and for automotive assembly and steel bridge manufacturing. It is also useful in handling glass and foundry. Well, this type of robot is used for also welding and painting, as well as many handling applications, like, well, as we mentioned before, metal casting. And well, the typical robot sizes range from a reach of 0.5 to over 3.5 meters and carrying capacities from 3 to over 1,000 kilograms. Well, secondly, we have the SCADA robots. These, the acronym is Selective Compliance Assembly Robot Arm, also known as SCARA. They have a donut-shaped body and consist of two parallel joints providing compliance to the selected plane. With a rotating shift position vertically, SCARA robots work in lateral movements and are best for assembly purposes. These robots also work on a 3-axis and have an easier integration and faster movement as compared to Cartesian robots. And while these kind of robots are typically small, with the largest having carrying capacities of about 2 kilograms and reach of about 1 meter. So, well, next for the advantages and disadvantages. Well, the advantages is that these robots are very fast. They have fast speed. They're able to repeat their movements, and while they're on their applications, they need huge workspace. And the disadvantages is that they require a robot controller, also as the articulated robots. And while they are difficult to program offline, and it's useful to plan your surfaces. The applications of these SCARA robots are mainly used for assembly, packaging, VOMED, and palletizing purposes. They are also used to handle semiconductor wafers and to load and unload machines. They're mainly used for assembly applications, also that they can, also like, as we mentioned, pack, small press standing, and these kind of robots is mainly constrained by their size and the limitation of being only 4 axis. And then, the next one is the Delta robot that we have. These Delta robots are also known as parallel robots. They have 3 arms connected to a single base mounted above the work surface. Delta robots work in dome shape and with high speed. They are highly delicate and precise. They are the most expensive industrial robots, today. And they're popular for their pick and place and product transfer application as they use 6 axes to perform a task. So, basically the advantages that these kind of robots have is that, as we mentioned, they are a very high-speed robot. They are highly operational precision, and the disadvantages is that it's difficult to operate due to that, these robots have a 6 axis, and they also require a separate robot controller. Then, the application that these robots have is that Delta robots are mainly used in the food industry along with pharmaceutical and electronic industry as well for fast pick and place as well as product transfer. Their application is also useful in flight simulators and automobile simulators, as well as for optical fiber alignment.
Well, the polar robots. The characteristics of the polar robots is that have an arm with two rotary joints and one linear joint, all connected to the base with a twisting joint. Other characteristic is that the axis in the polar robots works to form polar coordinates, allowing the robots to work in a spherical envelope. Uh, Also, they are also known to be one of the first kinds of industrial robots to ever be developed and are widely used for molding and welding purposes. And the last characteristic is that it sweeps a large volume of space, but the arm access remains limited within the work area. Uh, Next, about the advantages and disadvantage of the polar robots is that the advantage after they are freedom of movement. Also, they can handle large works volumes. Also, they require less floor space. And the last advantage is that they can reach above and below obstacles. And about the disadvantage, they cannot reach above itself, and they are so short vertical reach, and they are low precision and repeatability. And at last, they require robot controller. They require persons to control their movement. And the application of the polar robots is that the polar robots are widely used for casting die and for industrial works such as molding, injection, stacking, and stacking, forging, welding, and handling material and glass. And the cylindrical robots, the characteristics of the cylindrical robot is that they work in a rotary motion at the base and a prismatic joint to connect the links. The next characteristic is that it is in a cylindrical shape work envelope, which is achieved by rotating shaft and an extendable arm that can move in vertical and sliding motion. The last characteristic of cylindrical robots is that they are very similar to Cartesian robots in their axis motion and are made of two elements which are rotary and linear actuators. The advantage and disadvantage about the cylindrical robots. The advantages are that they are easy operation and installation. They are also they are also minimal assembly, and they are the cylindrical robots are freedom of movement. They also require less floor space, and they are able to carry heavy payloads. The disadvantage of the cylindrical robots is that they cannot reach around obstacles. They also have low precision in rotary motion in direction, and they know have new designs. Yeah, they don't have new designs. Application of cylindrical robots is that they are widely used to pick and place products such as transport of LCD panels and loading and unloading of machinery. They are also useful in assembly, dyeing, foundry, forging, and coating applications. Conclusion, we conclude that the industrial robots help you to do multiple tasks depending of the morphology of the robots. And that morphology define what task will the industrial robot do. Um, as example, there are robots for continuous use, heavy weight use, assembly use, and to use different tools. The use of these industrial robots will help humanity to make standardized, fast, and accurate diverse process and tasks. And as the size of the robot can make a robot able to do a task corresponding at its size, and the level of the freedom of the robot affects principally of the tasks that the robot will do. And we need to remember that a robot is considered only a robot when it has 3x, 3 axes or more, and when it has a chunkable programming.
And well, Also, another thing is that manufacturers nowadays should consider factors like accuracy, speed, travel, movement, load, capacity, and duty cycle before like buying or installing the robot that they're going to use, because well, they need to see the specifications of each robot so they can know what kind of robot would be the better for the work or the task they need. And well, basically that would be it for this presentation, and well, hope you like it.